Hello everyone, it's Chili here. I am back to talk about Altered going eternal and the introduction of the set rotation that some people are looking forward to, others are fearing. And I wanted to give you my thoughts on the article. Now, in essence, this note was actually part of the Seeds of Unity season patch that was released last week on the 10th of February. And I wanted to get a chance to go through it as promised in my video that I made last week. What does this mean for me as a player? What does this mean for the game as a whole? And my thoughts are my thoughts. I've been pretty vocal in terms of my opinion for this, and I'll tell you straight out. I think it is too early to remove 3 sets. Okay, that's just my opinion right now. Some people may think otherwise. And let's read what this part says, and I'll take you through my own thought pattern. At the same time, you may have completely different opinions, and some of the things that you're saying are incredibly valid. As I've had discussions with many people in the community, there is good and bad in this. I just feel we're leaving ourselves to have a very small amount of card pull. But more than that, I feel a number of the heroes, by actually introducing this rotation, will never get their time to shine in the sun. What was promised for them in terms of their ability to at least be competitively viable will never occur. Now, I say never because that's all the information we have right now. We have no idea if these heroes will ever come back. I hope they do. The question is, will they come back as they are? Will they come back with different text? And whether or not they're going to create, like Flesh and Blood has done, multiple versions of a hero that you can play, different abilities. Not sure what they're going to do, but let's read through what they've said. So, introducing rotation and an eternal format. And maybe part of the offset is an eternal format, right? During the Seeds of Unity Game Found campaign, many players discussed the possibility of card rotation, a change in current set legality similar to what exists in other trading card games. As Altered continues to grow, we are now reaching a point where older sets need to make room for newer releases. 7 sets in? Okay, that's my question. Now, if the announcement had only been for Beyond the Gates, I get it. You have to remove Beyond the Gates, or even Beyond the Gates uniques, which are so strong, and force people to say, I'm going to play with a new set of uniques that can actually change the meta. Because 80% of the decks being played, I can almost guarantee, at least from what I see in commentating, in reviewing the top decks, use uniques and cards from set 1, from Beyond the Gates. Alright, rotation helps keep the standard format healthy by reducing complexity, refreshing the metagame, and allowing a wider range of power levels and strategies to shine. I completely agree. It also helps make competitive play more accessible for newer players who may not own older or harder to find cards, and I'll say this, I don't believe that part. Here in the United States, you can buy Beyond the Gates and Trial by Frost incredibly cheap. Sometimes as cheap as less than $2 a pack. Whispers from the Maze is a little bit more expensive, and Skybound Odyssey much more expensive than that on the second-hand market. I mean, on the market if you go through anywhere, really. Now, I don't know what it's like in Europe, but I do believe that it is much harder to get some of the product in Europe. But because we have the ability of buying cards online at 2 to 3 cents for a common, less than a couple of bucks for the majority of them at the rare, I don't think there is a shortage of card supply. I don't think they're harder to find. If anything, I think it's harder to find the cards you need and get a playset of the current set. Not Seeds of Unity, because that hasn't come out, but that will be even harder because they've got a limited supply that they've done. But in a Skybound Odyssey, heck, it's been hard for me to get my own physical playset of cards. Now I can get them online, it's just getting the printing here. Now, with the release of Set 7 following Roots of Corruption, the following sets will rotate out of the standard format. Beyond the Gates Kickstarter Edition, makes sense, it's both of the same set. Trial by Frost and Whispers from the Maze. Okay, this rotation includes heroes, commons, rares, out of faction cards, and unique. So basically they're saying everything but tokens. Everything. And in essence, if the card has not been reprinted, that's what it's telling us. All original heroes, 3 per faction, 18 heroes are going to be rotated out. And I'll say this, you're getting the great heroes to come out, which I think may be a good idea, but you're also getting those that never had a chance to shine. Like, I always wanted to be able to build a Lindaway deck that didn't require some busted uniques to at least be competitively viable in some way. I wanted to see Subash get a chance to shine. I wanted to see a number of the other heroes that were second or third fiddle in their faction have a chance. And this is basically telling me it's in the too hard basket. I'm not going to do anything about it. I could be completely wrong, right? This is just my view. These are my thoughts. Okay. At the same time, the release of Set 7 will introduce a new Eternal format, which we will present in more detail soon. This format will allow players to continue using their favorite heroes and uniques in a more powerful and open environment. We know that many players have strong connection to these cards, especially those that have paid a fortune for some of the uniques they've got. And we want to make sure that they continue to have a meaningful place in Altered. And this is the part that I don't know yet, right? Meaningful to me means that you can use these cards to be able to play in competitive events that will give you the greatest return, the potential of going to Worlds, for example. Now, I do believe that they are doing that. They have said that this Eternal format is going to be part of the competitive circuit. If anything, it's actually the next line. The Eternal format will also be integrated into the official competitive circuit alongside Standard and Limited, and maybe that's enough for a lot of people. For me, I think it's actually a great thing. I do believe in it. I think the Eternal format is great. But Set 7 means in many cases, you're only going to have, at least at the beginning, 4 sets to play with, right? When the goal is to grow and grow, to have more variety, more choices, but maybe. So what I mean by that is, out of your common slots, you're now only going to have, at least for Set 7, access to 30, 60, 90, 120 commons to choose from. You're going to have, at the moment, maybe only 2 heroes legal per faction, potentially 3. I think we're going to have Set 8. We'll have, I almost feel like they're going to have to introduce 3 new heroes, at least for one of the factions. But then on top of that, what are we going to get? I'm not sure. Are any of the heroes that are currently part of the original triad of sets going to become official going forward? Okay? Not sure. My view, and these are my words again, I wish, and I honestly thought from what had been said by Equinox before, was that we were going to wait until Set 10 before we did that. So that there will always be 2 cycles of cards available to us, right? And what I mean by that, at Set 10, you can get rid of the first cycle, Set 1, 2, 3, and you will at least have Set 4, 5, and 6 as one Rika cycle, set 7, 8, 9, which we don't know what it's about, as another cycle. So anyway, that's where my thoughts are. That's where I believe it should have gone. It is not where it is. Will I support this? Absolutely yes. But the part for me with this game is that some things are going to be quite expensive. It's going to be much harder to get access to the cards that are needed for this cycle, right? And those people that are going to invest, and I'll use the example that I did on the podcast. Those people that are buying product for Skybound Odyssey are only going to get the chance to play for it just over a year. And now I call it an investment, and then some people say there's really no return on investment in cards. I'd beg to differ if you look at that Pokemon card that sold for millions. But what I mean is, are we getting utility out of these cards when in the main game, which in my mind Standard is, you're only able to play for a short period of time? Will this reduce the value of those cards? I'm not sure. I got my little girl in the background there giving us... I'll be out in just a second. Can you close the door? I'll be back in just a minute. Thank you, sweetheart. All right, so will they diminish the demand for cards because now they've got a set life for the pinnacle of the game, which is Standard? I don't believe Eternal will ever become the pinnacle of the game. I know that Commander, so to speak, is the pinnacle of the game in Magic. but I don't know Magic, but I know Flesh and Blood. And while the Eternal format there is good, it is not the competitive one. The other thing is, when we're talking about this, they're talking about it in a more, you can play in Eternal in a more powerful, a more open environment. What does that mean? I do hope that we have some banning and restrictions in that format as well that is governed and also looked after with the same level of care as they're trying to do with Standard. And the reason I say this is we don't want to get to a point, just like Flesh and Blood did for their first ever Eternal format, that everyone uses the same hero or the same 2 or 3 hero, and they're the only ones. And what it forced Legendary Studios, who owns Flesh and Blood, forced them to change the format where they actually started to put some erratas in, started to put some limitations on cards. But their first ever event was basically one hero. The majority of players came in with one hero for what was meant to be a celebration of all heroes, and it was a dud to begin with. It was the same mirror matches. For those of us that had played with Waru, it was basically the Waru meta in an environment that people did not want. Now, you also wanted to compete, so it was competitive. So, of course, you're going to play the best set, but people did not have choices. They did not bring choices to that event. Now, I think the rotation is great. My initial thoughts, though, if I was to have this a blank slate, what would I have done? I would have actually said in set 7, we're going to make Beyond the Gates completely removed. Now, if you look at it from a competitive standpoint, prior to the release of Skybound Odyssey, 3/4 of a deck, or around about 3/4 of a deck, was basically Beyond the Gates cards, right? With a little bit of Trial by Frost, a little bit of Whispers from the Maze. Skybound Odyssey came in, and we started seeing that it was almost 50% of the deck that was Beyond the Gates, with Skybound Odyssey becoming a 30% and then 10% for Beyond the Gates and 10% from Trial by Frost. Much better deck composition, or at least set composition in those decks that were in the upper echelon. Then, I think with new cards coming in, we're going to get an even better spread. And my hope was that we would be able to see different deck types because people were willing to try and play new heroes. The other thing that I didn't like is it felt that it became the too hard basket. And that to me is almost a cop-out personally that says, I don't know how to make this hero good, so I'm going to go away from it. Let's just start again, scratch that hero. And people that had an affinity to a character, some of them are going to leave, some of them are going to get upset at this. I hope that's not the case, because what they're saying, this clean slate, this new slate will allow there to be freshness in the meta. And I believe in that. I believe in this. I believe in the use of the banning and suspensions to be able to alter and change the meta to a way that new heroes and new archetypes can come to light. I love what they've done by removing the day 1 for Sigismar, the token that you generate, by getting rid of Tiny Jin and Haven Serengar to be able to make Bravos make it a little bit more difficult to ramp, so that some of these decks that had felt that they were being very exhausted, especially within the Muna faction, if you're trying to anchor anything, you now have a chance, but you have more days to be able to get to a point where you can advance or be further ahead. So when the hunger does come, and it will when you're playing Bravos, it doesn't impact you as much. Sierra, on the other hand, and some of the Axiom factions have a harder time because that you're not really advancing as much as you would with Muna by having those anchored heroes. But anyway, I don't know what they're going to do. I will absolutely support the format. I believe in Equinox. I think it is going to be great. I just wish it was done a little bit different. But on the positive, I'll say this on the positive, the fact that Equinox has given this announcement now, so that we can prepare, not just for those that are players, to start testing new formats, start testing new cards, getting out of using Beyond the Gates, especially Beyond the Gates, Trial by Frost and Whispers from the Maze. Unfortunately, you'll never get your chance to shine all those cards. But not only that, it's also telling the investor and those that are looking to buy potential cards to say, hey, just so you understand, those cards will have a limited shelf life in Standard. But we're not leaving you alone. We're going to introduce the Eternal format. I want there to be bannings and suspensions on that to make that as competitive and as fun as we have in the Standard. Now, the other thing that I'd probably talk about is, in this Eternal format, would we differentiate Would you differentiate it in any way? Will it have access to more cards, more uniques, less uniques, less? No, I don't think you can go less cards. Will there be a different setup that will make people want to play it in a way that is as enjoyable as standard, in a way that is as enjoyable as singleton or the Nook format? So anyway, that's where my mind is going. I do believe in the game. I want to make sure people say that I am not ripping the game, but I think we could have made a little bit more of an effort to ensure Trial by Frost and Whispers from the Maze cards had a chance, to ensure that the heroes within Beyond the Gates had a chance for those that never made to the top or even the mid tier of competitive viability. And on that, I bid you adieu.